Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're diving deep into human nature with Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature. I find this stuff fascinating, and the passages you picked out really got me thinking.
Well, it seems like you're interested in, really understanding what makes people tick, like all those hidden forces that drive us.
Yeah. Greene's book really seems to get at that, like decoding those hidden motives and stuff. So, where should we even begin? I mean, one thing that really struck me was this idea that humans aren't as rational as we, you know, like to think we are.
Oh, yeah. That's a huge theme in Greene's work, the whole thing about how our emotions and unconscious patterns kind of override logic, especially now in the digital age. You marked that part about social media and how it's used for manipulation, right?
Yeah. It's scary how easily we all get swept up in online trends and arguments and all that. And Greene uses that example, the Athenian assembly, to show this
Yeah.
historically, right?
Exactly. It's crazy to think about. A whole bunch of smart people making awful decisions based on, fear and anger. That's like the Athenian assembly in a nutshell. They were constantly reacting to the latest crisis instead of thinking long term, strategically, which is what Pericles tried to get them to do.
And the thing is that this keeps happening over and over again throughout history. It's like a pattern. Like the 2008 financial crash, which you also flagged, it's another example of this collective irrationality.
Absolutely. Greene talks about the temptation of easy money and ignoring all the warning signs, and just wanting to believe in a new paradigm, that kind of thing that's supposed to change everything.
It's like we're programmed to make the same mistakes. So if
Yeah.
we're not really driven by logic, then what is driving us? You marked a passage about what Greene calls the emotional self, this like hidden force that messes up even our best intentions. What's that all about?
It's a really cool concept. He says our emotions evolved for survival, but not necessarily for making rational choices in today's world, right? And this can cause all sorts of inner conflict and lead us to make choices we regret later. He even calls it high-grade irrationality.
High-grade irrationality. Wow. He also talks about how our childhood experiences can create these like emotional triggers that affect us even as adults. So how can we even become more aware of these hidden forces, both in ourselves and in others?
Self-awareness is key, that's what Green says. Understanding those things that make us react without thinking, our own emotional patterns. He also talks about something he calls analytic empathy.
Analytic empathy. What is that exactly?
It's about like going deeper than just surface emotions, really trying to understand someone's background, their motivations, their insecurities, even those early childhood experiences that might be affecting them now.
So it's like you're trying to put together the pieces of their emotional puzzle. You also highlighted those sections on specific character types, like the deep narcissist, the rebellious type, the overly agreeable person. Are those just labels, or can they actually help us understand people?
Green says we shouldn't just put people into boxes, but recognizing these patterns can be helpful. Think of them like recurring types that can give you some insight into their behavior. He uses Howard Hughes as an example of that deep narcissism.
Ah, Howard Hughes. Brilliant, successful, but in the end, quite isolated.
Exactly. Green talks about how Hughes' deep-seated need for control came from insecurities in his childhood and ended up shaping his relationships and how he ran his businesses.
It's like a cautionary tale, showing how even with success, if you don't deal with that narcissism, it can really sabotage you. It reminds me of that other section you marked, the one about influence, power dynamics, even manipulation. Is Green saying we should become master manipulators?
No, not at all. He's more interested in helping us understand how influence works so we can motivate people and persuade them the right way. The emphasis is on ethical persuasion, not taking advantage of people. He uses Lyndon B. Johnson and how he rose to power in the Senate as an example.
LBJ, known for his legendary political maneuvering.
Right. Green talks about how Johnson used flattery, doing favors strategically, and just this uncanny ability to know what people wanted all to gain influence.
So it's about playing the game, but with integrity, which is interesting because it connects to that other concept you marked, the shadow, our hidden dark side.
That's a really thought-provoking part of the book. Green's point is that repressing those dark impulses doesn't make them go away. They can actually come out in unhealthy ways if we don't acknowledge them and integrate them, make them part of who we are.
That's kind of unsettling, but I can see how ignoring those parts of ourselves could backfire. He talks about Richard Nixon and Anton Chekhov and how they struggled with their shadows, right?
He does. Nixon's paranoia and Chekhov's internal conflicts are really good examples of how the shadow can manifest in different ways. Green believes that to be truly self-aware, you have to confront those darker parts of yourself and find a way to work with them.
It's like making peace with all parts of ourselves, even the ones we'd rather hide. Speaking of hidden aspects, you also highlighted those passages about gender dynamics. Is Greene saying we should try to be more masculine or feminine?
No, actually, he thinks that repressing either side can limit our creativity and our relationships. He thinks that we all have both masculine and feminine qualities, and embracing them can make our lives richer. He uses Caterina Sforza, that Renaissance countess, as an example.
Katerina Sforza, what a woman. It's inspiring to see how she defied all those limiting gender roles.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another tough emotion you flagged: envy. Why do you think Greene believes it's more common than we admit?
I think it's one of those emotions we're taught to suppress.
Yeah.
We don't want to admit we're feeling it.
You're right. Greene thinks envy comes from insecurity and wanting what other people have. He gives some examples of envious behavior and strategies for recognizing it and moving past it.
So it's about being aware of those feelings and understanding what they're telling us about ourselves. And what about grandiosity? You marked a section on that too.
It's another common flaw. Greene makes a distinction between fantastical grandiosity, which is based on delusion and self-importance, and practical grandiosity, which can actually motivate us. He uses Michael Eisner, the former CEO of Disney, as an example of how fantastical grandiosity can lead to someone's downfall.
So it's about channeling ambition in a healthy way and not letting it become an ego trip. Makes sense. With all this talk about flaws and shortcomings, it makes you wonder if we're so prone to these pitfalls, what can we do to live more fulfilling lives? You highlighted several passages about the power of purpose.
That's crucial. Greene believes having a strong sense of purpose helps us navigate life's challenges and overcome those negative things. He uses examples like Flannery O'Connor, who, even while battling a serious illness, found meaning in her writing.
Finding that thing that gives us meaning, that drives us, that's powerful.
He also talks about what he calls the spirit of the times, this invisible force that shapes generations. It's like understanding the cultural currents of your time so you can make a bigger impact.
I'm really intrigued by that spirit of the times idea. How can we tap into that collective energy? How does it tie into everything else we've been talking about?
That's a great question and one we can definitely explore further. But you mentioned wanting a summary of the key insights, right?
Yes, I think a recap would be really helpful right now.
Okay, so here's a 10-point summary of what we've covered so far. 1. Humans are more irrational than we realize, driven by emotions and those unconscious patterns that often come from childhood. 2. Understanding the emotional self is key for navigating relationships, both personal and professional ones. 3. Recognizing common character types, like the narcissist, the rebel, can really give you insights into people's behavior. 4. Mastering the art of ethical influence using techniques like strategic flattery can be a powerful tool, but it's gotta be ethical. 5. Acknowledging and integrating your shadow, that darker side, is super important for self-awareness, and so you don't sabotage yourself. 6. Embracing both masculine and feminine qualities can lead to more creativity and deeper connections. 7. Recognize and overcome envy by understanding it usually comes from insecurity and wanting what others have. 8. Cultivate what Greene calls practical grandiosity. Channel your ambition into good work, but avoid that fantastical grandiosity that's based on delusion. 9. Finding and pursuing your own unique purpose can bring meaning to your life and make you more resilient. 10. And finally, we touched on how important it is to confront our own mortality and master our perception of time, but we'll explore that more deeply next time.
Wow, that is a thought-provoking list.
Hmm.
I'm especially interested in that last point about time and mortality. I'm ready to dive deeper into that.
It seems like you're really interested in how understanding that we have limited time can help us live more fully. That's where we'll pick up next time. So we were talking about how facing our own mortality can actually help us live better lives, more fulfilling lives.
It seems kind of counterintuitive, right? Like you'd think focusing on death would make us more anxious. But Greene seems to think differently.
Yeah, he argues that when we acknowledge that our time is limited, it helps us figure out what really matters, what to prioritize. And it helps us break free from fear and procrastination.
It's like a wake-up call. Hey,
Hmm.
you don't have forever to waste time on things that aren't important to you.
Exactly. And that leads right into this idea of mastering our perception of time, something you highlighted.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. Greene suggests we can make time work for us instead of always feeling like we're running out of it. How do we actually do that?
He says time is subjective, that we can slow it down if we savor experiences, if we cultivate a sense of wonder in everyday life.
It's like when we were kids, time seemed to move so much slower back then. Everything was new and exciting.
You got it. Greene reminds us to tap back into that childlike curiosity, that sense of awe. He uses the example of Caterina Sforza, that Renaissance countess we discussed earlier.
Oh, Katerina. The warrior, the mother, such a fascinating woman, defied so many expectations. How does she fit into this idea of mastering time?
Well, she embodies that idea of embracing both masculine and feminine energy. She was a strong leader, decisive, but also wasn't afraid to be vulnerable, embrace her creative side. Greene says integrating those qualities can help us see the world with new eyes, appreciate those little moments that make life richer.
It's like she had this expansive view of life, which probably helped her experience time more fully. This reminds me of something else we talked about, that spirit of the times idea.
Right. You were curious about how we tap into that collective energy of our generation.
Exactly. It seems like understanding the zeitgeist, as Greene calls it, could be a key to making a real impact. But how do we actually do that?
It starts by recognizing those shared values, anxieties, aspirations, all those things that people around you are feeling. When you understand those underlying currents, you can connect with others more deeply, create work that resonates.
So it's not just about individual ambition. It's about understanding the larger forces that are shaping our world.
Precisely. Greene uses the example of Georges Danton, a leader during the French Revolution. He was able to harness that revolutionary energy and rise to power. But it's important to note that even Danton was swept away by those same forces he thought he was mastering.
It makes you wonder if even someone like Danton could fall victim to the spirit of the times. How can we make sure we're using it to our advantage, not being controlled by it?
That's a great question. It gets to the heart of what Greene is trying to teach us about human nature. It's a constant balancing act, understanding those forces, and using our own judgment, our self-awareness to navigate them. Remember, he emphasizes rationality and analytic empathy, even as we acknowledge the power of our emotions and those unconscious drives.
Finding that balance is key. This conversation has really shown how everything is connected: rationality and irrationality, the shadow self, the power of purpose, even how we experience time.
It's true. Greene weaves all these ideas together to create this rich picture of human nature. And it sounds like you're starting to see how these insights apply to your own life.
I am. I'm already thinking about how I can be more aware of my own emotional triggers and how understanding the spirit of the times can help me connect with my audience on a deeper level.
That's great. And remember, Greene also emphasizes learning from history. He uses all those examples from the past to show how human behavior repeats itself in patterns.
It's like we can learn from the mistakes and triumphs of those who came before us so we can make better choices.
Exactly. Greene reminds us that human nature has a dark side, but it also has this incredible potential for creativity, resilience, growth.
This takes me back to one of the points from our summary, that idea of acknowledging and integrating our shadow side. Greene seems to be saying even our flaws, those darker impulses, can be a source of strength if we understand them.
Absolutely. It's about embracing all of who we are, recognizing that both our strengths and weaknesses make us who we are.
You know, it's interesting how many of those historical figures Greene uses had to face tough challenges and make difficult choices. He doesn't shy away from showing us how complex and contradictory human nature is.
That's what makes his work so compelling. He doesn't give easy answers or simple solutions. Instead, he encourages us to grapple with these questions, to develop our own judgment and wisdom.
It's like he's giving us tools to navigate this human experience with all its messiness and beauty.
That's a great way to put it. He's not just presenting theories. He's giving us a framework to understand ourselves and the world.
It sounds like you're drawn to the idea of using this knowledge to improve your own life and work.
I am. I'm thinking about how I can use Greene's insights to build better relationships, make smarter decisions, and just navigate all the complexities of being human with more awareness.
That's fantastic. It's exciting to see how these concepts are already sparking new ideas for you.
It really is. I'm inspired to keep exploring Greene's work and these timeless truths about human nature.
Me too. This deep dive has been incredibly thought-provoking. It's amazing how Greene connects psychology, history, philosophy, even spirituality in such a compelling way.
He's a master storyteller, a keen observer of human nature, and it sounds like you're interested in applying these insights to your own creative work.
Definitely. I'm thinking about how I can use Greene's ideas to create characters that are more complex and relatable, to explore those universal themes of human nature in my writing, to bring more depth to my work.
That's wonderful. It's inspiring to see how these concepts are sparking your creative imagination.
It makes me realize that understanding human nature isn't just about gaining some kind of intellectual advantage. It's about becoming more compassionate, more self-aware, and ultimately more human ourselves.
That's a beautiful insight. It gets to the heart of what Greene's trying to teach us. That by understanding the laws of human nature, we can move beyond judgment and manipulation toward a more authentic way of being.
It's interesting how this connects back to that last point in our summary,
Yeah.
confronting our mortality and mastering how we experience time.
You're right. Those two concepts are deeply connected. By acknowledging our limited time, we can appreciate the present moment more, make choices that align with our values.
Those big questions can actually motivate us, help us focus on what truly matters.
Exactly. Greene reminds us that being aware of death can be a powerful catalyst for living a more intentional and meaningful life.
I think that's a perfect place to stop for today. We've covered so much, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface of Greene's insights.
I agree, there's so much more to explore in his work. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to consider. If, as Greene suggests, our experience of time is subjective, what steps can you take to slow it down, savor the present moment more fully?
It really makes you think how we just rush through life sometimes.
We do, and Greene's point is that if we change how we see time, we can actually experience it differently.
Hmm.
He talks about, really savoring experiences, cultivating that sense of wonder, and paying attention to those details we usually miss.
So like training ourselves to be more present, more in the moment, to appreciate all the richness.
Exactly. He even says that if we focus on our senses, we can actually slow down time and create more vivid memories. Think about it. When was the last time you really stopped and, smelled the roses?
To be honest, it's been a while. I'm always going from one thing to the next. So many thoughts in my head.
That's the thing about today's world. Everything's so fast-paced. But Greene reminds us that we have a choice. We can choose how we experience time. It's not just about managing our schedule, it's about changing our mindset.
It reminds me of that other point about understanding the spirit of the times. Our culture's obsessed with speed and efficiency, which makes it even harder to slow down.
Right. There's so much information, so many distractions. We're always pressured to do more, be more, achieve more. But Greene says we got to resist that, create space for thinking and contemplation.
It's like we have to reclaim our time, be intentional about how we spend it and how we experience it.
Exactly. It's about recognizing time is precious, it's our most valuable resource, and we can choose how we use it. Greene also talks about understanding our own rhythms. Some people are more energetic in the morning, some in the evening. We need to honor those differences and work with our natural energy.
That makes a lot of sense. It's better than trying to force ourselves into a mold that doesn't fit.
Exactly. And it goes back to self-awareness, which is a big theme in Greene's book. Understanding our strengths, our weaknesses, our tendencies, so we can make choices that are right for us.
This conversation has really shown me how connected everything is. Our experience of time, our purpose, our relationships, how we see ourselves in the world. It's all intertwined.
It is. And Greene's point is that we're all part of that, connected in ways we might not even realize. He encourages us to see the world with more empathy and compassion. Everyone's on their own journey.
The more we understand human nature, the more we understand ourselves.
That's beautifully put. And it speaks to how transformative Greene's work can be. He's not just giving information, he's giving us a new way to look at the world, at our place in it.
This has been a fantastic deep dive. We've explored so many fascinating ideas, those irrational drives, our hidden shadows, the power of purpose, and how we can master our perception of time.
It seems like you're drawn to using this knowledge for good, for self-awareness, for empathy, for creating a better life, not just for your own gain.
Absolutely. I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to use these insights in their own lives too.
Me too. And just as a reminder, here's a recap of those 10 key takeaways we covered. 1. Humans are driven by irrational forces more than we realize, particularly strong emotions and unconscious motivations rooted in our childhood. 2. Understanding the emotional self and its influence on behavior is crucial for navigating personal and professional relationships. 3. Recognize common character types, narcissists, rebels, pleasers, to better understand and anticipate people's actions and motivations. 4. Master the art of influence, but always with ethical intentions, using strategies like flattery and strategic favors. 5. Acknowledge and integrate your shadow, that hidden dark side, to avoid self-sabotage and harness its energy constructively. 6. Embrace both your masculine and feminine qualities to unlock creativity and improve your relationships. 7. Recognize and overcome envy, understanding that it's often a symptom of insecurity and the desire for what others possess. 8. Cultivate practical grandiosity, channeling your ambition into productive work while avoiding the pitfalls of fantastical grandiosity based on delusion and self-importance. 9. Find and pursue your unique sense of purpose to navigate life's challenges, overcome negativity, and attract authentic success and fulfillment. 10. Confront your mortality and master your perception of time to appreciate the present moment, slow down its passage, and live more consciously.
This has been an amazing journey. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what it means to be human.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you. Remember, self-discovery and understanding human nature is a journey. It never really ends. There's always more to learn, more to explore, more to experience.
That's a great reminder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the laws of human nature. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep searching for those deeper truths about yourselves and the world around you.